held over several positions of CEO and director in corporate career in India and GCC. For the past decade, he has been working as a mentor, what he calls himself as UnConsultant, in helping organizations to build sales productivity with his IP, GASP, which stands for Generally Accepted Sales Principle. His focus has been to get startups and entrepreneurs to master the science of sales, execution, and sustain this to build their businesses. He has an obsession for building sales productivity and has now launched the GASP Sales Academy with a similar mission. While I met many sales professionals who are definitely concerned about improving sales, but one thing about Mr. Suri is he's a person who's always talking about improving sales productivity before he talks about business development. So let's find out why. Welcome, Mr. Suri. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Major. And it's wonderful to be here and interact with you once again with the My Startup TV and your team. It's lovely to be here.
Okay, so you have a long career of about 37 years in sales. When you look back, what are the key milestones that have defined your approach to sales?
You see, I actually didn't start in sales. There's a funny part. I started in marketing because I was a MBA from SP Jain. In fact, we are the first batch, the pioneer batch of 83. So that itself was a startup in a certain way. And then I went to marketing because I thought marketing is all that there is to of career. I took my first plunge into sales in 87 in a large company where I volunteered to take up the job of a branch manager in Bangalore. That was a turning point. Even today, so many years down the road, I still recollect and I use those examples of how not to manage a sales team, because everything that had to go wrong went wrong in that place. I was very young, I was naive, I trusted my people, sales guys, my partners, and the buck stopped with me. When I told the story to my bosses, they said, look, you opted for it, the buck stops with you. So that was the first lesson I learned, that in sales, the buck really stops with you wherever you are. Thereafter, I had a chance to work in the GCC countries for close to 15 years. Now, in these countries, as you're probably aware, they're large trading houses. They set up large divisions and they represent large brands. So all the consumer brands and all the industrial brands there are sold by distributors. Now, those distributors are large companies. They are not small outfits like what we have here. So working there, starting with a British company called Inchcape, was experience for me. And that is where I started looking at the processes, because these people were so process driven. And the other good part was I learned a lot from the principals whom we represented, like Nestle, Kraft, Procter & Gamble, FMX. I learned about the obsession that they have with sales operations, which is what I'm bringing to the table here. During part of that work, I was working in retail as well. So retail was an eye-opener for me. I moved to India back in 2004 with Reliance Retail. I was part of the startup team for that. The thing about retail is it's a very humbling experience because dealing with the customer or the consumer on the job, and that has taught me really the finer point of understanding the consumer perspective or the user perspective, which once again I built my efforts today. So these are the 3 or 4 main milestones, I would say. The final one was in 2010 when I started my own consultancy, or as I call myself, an UnConsultant, because I want to focus on sales execution and sales development. Sales training is a part of that, but it's a larger role. And I found that not too many people talk about this. So that is where my journey started. And the milestones are very important because now looking back at 37 years, you can encapsulate all of that into one package deal, and let others not make the same mistakes that I did.
I know I'm quite, I wanted to touch upon that point when you said UnConsultant. Why UnConsultant? Where most of them want to be consultants.
Well, there's a story about this, how 7-Up in the US marketed themselves many years ago when it was a cola market. They called themselves an Uncola. Because how do you capture a customer's attention? By repositioning competition. That's the classic marketing, the strategy. So when I was a consultant, there are everybody, and there are good consultants, marketing, brand, all kind of consultants, training consultants. So I called myself UnConsultant because as a consultant, I'm not saying that people do this always, but generally you tend to give advice. In my case, I said I will not really give the advice in the area of sales operations, execution, and building sales efficiencies, which is very, very rare, and then also implement it. So very hands-on and dirtying your hands kind of experience. Hence the word unconsultant.
And one thing that we see is when it comes to sales, the younger generation, I mean, at least I've experienced in the last 10 years, I'm yet to see somebody coming up and saying, I won't take up sales. People want to run away from it. I mean, if you to ask anybody what are you doing, they would say, I'm doing MBA finance, MBA HR. Sales, nobody wants to get into it. Why?
I think that, as I got into it so many years ago, when I talked about my graduating from SPJ and getting into marketing, situation is the same even now. I mean, a lot of people like marketing. It's glamour. There is a lot of publicity. There is a lot of recognition attached with that. Sales is a very slightly more dirty job, operations, and the buck stops with you. As I had learned to my great discomfort when I went to sales, it's not a job for the faint-hearted. But the point that I'll make later on, and which culminates in the academy, is that it's a science. And if you don't know it's a science, you're going to be really puzzled and terrified. If you know it's a science, it can be learned and taught, and you can teach others. So there is no issue there. I wish that more people talk of it as a science. Selling, sales management, everything is a science with processes. And if this part is actually imparted in the MBA schools right at the beginning, I think a lot more people will tend to come into sales than perhaps they do on their own.
Who has shaped your approach to sales and sales management?
Well, I think I owe my current thinking about this to a lot of mentors. Starting from the very first boss I had when I was in marketing, when I was very raw from the institute. In my sales journey, especially in the GCC, I had I'm talking of the 90s, early 90s. So the all British bosses, they came in from the UK with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge about handling brands. But we were in a distribution business, so I actually learned a lot of what I'm practicing now from my principals. That is the people we represented, like Procter and Gamble. P&G is a sales machine. I mean, there are two sales machines in this world which are very, very close to operation. One is FMX, the Mars chocolate people, who are not that prevalent in India, and P&G. The people I interacted with them because I happened to be in the companies which represented those. I had done nothing to earn that merit. It is just that I was there at the right place, right time. And, these products were being sold by us and we were trained by them. And that is when I saw how exactly they went about the whole job of managing the operations and going up execution. So some of the bosses in P&G and in the brands that I handled were very useful. And later on, I would say the entire retail, one of the doyens of the retail is Mr. Raghu Pillai, who passed away. So he started, Spencer. He came to Reliance Retail, and he was a master at it. I mean, I learned a lot from him in terms of talking to customers, handling brands, managing relationships. So yeah, I think one does learn a lot, and you have to pick it up and be ready to learn. That's the whole thing.
And though you say that sales is not just an art, it is also a science. There is much more to just going and selling a product or giving information about the product, isn't it? I mean, there is also this interpersonal relationship that you need to build as a sales executive, as a sales manager, as somebody who's heading sales.
So the thing about sales is, let me tell you one mantra. No matter what you're selling, ice creams, forklifts, SaaS products, or machinery, remember one thing. It is the people's business, because it's people all the way, starting from your sales team, sales partners, associates. So you really need to manage people. And that comes with a lot of maturity and a lot of knocks in life. This is number one. Number two is that people confuse sales with just selling. So selling essentially is a very important part. It's about 30% of the entire sales process. Very important part. But there are things to do before the sale happens and after the sale happens to secure the business. And that is where the focus has to be for the complete chain. And when I looked at it, when I saw the travails and tribulations of people, including my own. And when I worked as a consultant or as an unconsultant, and I saw that especially SMEs, MSMEs, these small scale businesses in India or anywhere in the world struggle with these processes. That is what actually led to the birth of GASP, generally accepted sales principles. But I'll talk about that in a minute if you have got anything else to ask me.
As a sales director, during your career and later as a CEO, what were the challenges, sales challenges that you faced?
In sales, the law of karma is very, very, very potent. If you don't, if you're not a good follower, when you are a follower, if you're not going to listen to your boss, you'll find that when you become a boss, your people don't listen to you. There's a strange way of karma catching up, particularly in sales. One of the things about sales that I found when I was a salesperson was I probably never appreciated the pains of my bosses when they're managing a sales team. When I became a boss, when I started managing sales teams, and I understood that by the time that, okay, I'm talking of about 15 years back, I understood there's a science, the process to it. We must go on a systematic way. But when I went to recruit people, the sales guys, I found them all over the place. Okay, 95% actually thought that selling and sales management is an art. Okay, so they didn't come into processes. They came to me on an as is where is basis. Companies said, you're the boss, manage them. And then I had to go up and down and upside down, whatever, to get the things managed. So one of the things I found always was recruiting the good salesperson. And to this day, that remains one of the biggest challenges for companies, big and small. The second thing I found was retaining good talent, because I found that salespeople are very finicky compared to, let's say, an accounts or a manufacturing guy who comes straight, do the job. Sales guys require a lot of mollycoddling. They require training. They require engagement. They require a lot of stuff. That's the nature of the business, and there are multiple people doing that. And if any of them doesn't do the job or doesn't do it properly, the motivation level just drops very, very quickly for sales guys, and they then want to leave. So retaining people is a very big challenge. And the last but not the least, the topic that we are going to talk about, assuming they are there, how do you make them productive? Because every salesperson has got a cost. So in sales, a cost by itself per se is not bad. It is what output you get out of it. That is the difference. And that is where I had to find guidance, mentors, processes to make it happen. And as a sales leader, I have to lead the way. So all the time. And the other part I was come to was that when I became a CEO, the problem was even more severe. Okay, as a sales director, my function was only sales. So I was 100% on the sales function. That was my job, day in, day out. I could somehow manage all of this, in a reasonable way. But when it came to CEO, I had manufacturing, I had finance, I had HR, all of them require attention. And yet the sales function, which was crucial to get the company, the business we wanted, at the cost we wanted, that is the productive way, was suffering. And I was just sitting out as a CEO and said, oh God, I wish I could do something about it. That is where I come up with this statement that every CEO has a secret wish. And that wish is, I wish my sales team could do better. Because they're all his people, they're all recruited by his team members, but he just got a small, slight wish. And when I was a CEO, I just felt, oh, can somebody just come and help me out? Okay, training is one part, but can you put the processes in? Can you guide them? Can you be a mentor to them and take over that role? That is the biggest challenge I found, both as a sales director and more as a CEO.
You are also in retail, both in GCC countries and India. How was that experience, and how has that shaped your approach to selling?
So I think as I mentioned a little earlier, retail is a humbling experience. If you are the CEO of a company and you walk into your store, which your people are managing, associates are managing, and you find a customer then comes and talks to you about product not available, you can't just say, okay, I'll get somebody to look into it, I'll walk away. No, you're supposed to guide the person, talk to the person, take to the person to the shelf, understand. Okay, so it's a very humbling experience. And what I found was, very interestingly, we sell all brands in retail, all big brands, small brands, we negotiate prices. Consumers rarely buy the product that they buy because of the reason that the brand owners think. The brand owners think it's positioned in XYZ way. the consumer is buying. But no, the consumer, who happens to be mostly the women folk all over the world, they have their own mindset. And if you look at people like us, men who are not that involved perhaps in shopping at least, but when you look at how we buy our shirts and things that matter to us, it's the same. So the consumer mind is very, it's very fickle, I would say. It's very fickle, that's what I'm looking for. And you need to capture the consumer at the point of sale. That is the moment of truth. So what I discovered in short was the moment of truth when the consumer decides to pick up your brand from the store on after being visible, or when go to Kirana and the guy actually recommends it to you. That battle has to be won at that point. But for doing that, the entire set of processes coming from the value creation to selling to the retailer, keeping the retailer motivated, keeping the sales partner motivated, keeping the sales team motivated, has to be absolutely 100% in place to make that consumer, to make the company win that moment of truth. So if you ask me, that is biggest learning I had, and that is where I'm paranoid about this moment of truth for anybody I work with or any client that I work with.
And how do you do that? I mean, how do you keep the motivation?
Well, that's the $1 million question, and that is a 1 crore question, you can say, and that is where I created a system. So I'll tell you the story of GASP right now. You see, I worked in companies, as I mentioned, and I worked as an UnConsultant, and I found that large companies had their own SOP manuals. They may have a manual, but they might not adhere to it. That's the second part of it. But they had some manuals. When I work with entrepreneurs, startups who are struggling to create a product, the approach is, let's get the result. Okay, let's get the result. We need to do this product. We need to get this sale. Let's do that. And in that entire result chasing this push, process takes a backseat. What do they say? Sir, actually, we don't have time for processes, sir. We are very busy building our business. The process will come later. The fact of the matter is, it is a process that will lead the way. MS Dhoni always says, process is the king. He says, if you follow the process, you will get the result. And if by chance, sometimes you do not get the result, even after following the process, there are some learnings. So what I decided to do was go through all the learnings I've done and make a document, make a sales toolkit. Now, what do I call it? This is where I take inspiration from our finance colleagues. Finance is standardized across all countries, all companies across the world. I mean, you don't have any confusion on what is the capital expenditure, what is the revenue expenditure, how do you account for it. They have a system called GAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. It is stamped and sealed and delivered by God, you can say. In sales, we don't have that. So I created an IP called Generally Accepted Sales Principles, GASP, on the premise that this is the standard that I would like to implement across to companies big and small. And this is a standard that companies should follow to make that sales machine process-oriented, so that they chase the process and the result becomes automatic. So this is exactly what we try to do. So to answer your question, there are 4 buckets in GASP. There is the customer management, there is the sales partner management, there's a sales team management, and a sales operations management. Unless all of these are linked together, assuming that you have got a sales partner, in some cases, companies don't have partners, but unless you link all these together, you cannot win that moment of truth on a sustainable basis. One-off victory is possible, but a sustainable basis where the brand is working for you, the partner is working for you, the sales team is rooting for you, and you are then managing operations on some leading indicators, that brings the entire thing. So to answer your question, it is a process. And that's the beauty of it. It's actually looks very complex, but when you actually sit down to implement it, it's almost automatic. And if you learn it, I have a saying that this science, if you ingrain it, it looks like an art. So you need to ingrain this science to make it an art. To answer that question very simply, it is just done. If you do all of this, automatically the consumer will pick up the product and you will get your market share.
You stressed upon the whole idea of or the importance of process when it comes to sales. And you also know, I have from your experience, that startups are hard pressed for resources, especially in the early stages. Like we ourselves, as My Startup TV, are 2 years old, and we also are hard pressed for resources. So is it right to assume that GASP Academy, Sales Academy, would be able to help early stage startups with finding the process or defining the process?
Yeah. So let me come to the genesis of GASP Sales Academy. So I first created the IP called GASP, and I've been doing good work with that with clients, and they've been happy in terms of. And what does GASP do? It's very simple. It builds sales productivity. That's all. So we don't look at marketing, branding. It just builds sales productivity. It looks at the finer points. This is when I thought an academy is a place of higher learning. An academy is a place where you can go beyond just theory. You can implement it. You can engage with your cohorts, engage with the clients, and get them to the next level. So in the GASP Sales Academy, what we are trying primarily to do is to define the GASP way of sales, which is a 27 processes that define your business, whether it's B2B or B2C. The processes are the same. There are fine elements which are defining the fine flavor. That's number one. Thereafter, we also want to do a build, operate, transfer model with the startups or MSMEs or any client about how this will be implemented in their companies and how to make the change management happen. It's not an easy process because most of the people sitting on the other side and who in the client side or in the SME are probably not scientists. They come to this saying that, oh, selling is an art. Ho jayega, we'll just do something. And then you start presenting this, there's a reaction. So there's a whole process of implementation. Okay. The third is sales training, selling skills training, very important. So traditionally, intervention in sales has been only on training. So in my GASP Academy, there are a lot of other things, but selling skills training is also there. And multiple things on negotiation. And I do find one point about entrepreneurs that many of them are weak on selling per se, selling skills per se, because entrepreneurs have been selling all the time, apart from customers to employees, to stakeholders, to government, to VCs, PEs, and very often they falter. So we want to give them that training with renowned experts and mentors that already have got on board. The fourth aspect is, the next level is performance management and development, which forms a core part of managing a salesperson journey and making them more productive. So there are a whole host of things here. It actually goes into the world of human resource management a little bit, but it is tailor-made for the salespeople. And there we look at things like sales academies, how do you measure your sales team, what are the incentives, awards you give, helping startups to design all of this. And lastly, as an addendum, anything on Salesforce automation. See, the thing about Salesforce automation is, selling, I was doing 40 years back, 35 years back, and now has not changed. In fact, selling has not changed for 1,000 years. It's the same.
Is that correct?
Selling has not changed. The process of selling is the same. Okay. When you,
given all the technology that you get
so technology is an enabler. So this is the main point. All the millennials who are watching this today, sales is the same. You have a customer and you have a brand as a moment of truth. That needs to be one. The medium through which you communicate and convince them has changed. Okay. But the process, think even when you're doing a B2B business, let me give an example. You're selling a high-end machinery and you're into the request from RFI, RFP stage. Ultimately, the buyer is a person, is an individual. Okay, you may work with a committee. A lot gets into that because I was a buyer for retail. I was working in retail. I was a buyer for many products, and I know how I behave. On one side, I was a consumer for those products in the supermarket, but when it came to buying, it's different. So the technology is an enabler. So what we're going to be doing, coming back to the Salesforce automation part, is that we are going to be looking at apps and Salesforce automation in such a way that they build in what I call the leading sales indicators to make the client or make the business work. A lot of the automation systems we have today are dealing with basic information. They don't have business analytics. There is some very good work being done by a lot of young entrepreneurs on this, and we hope to bring them to the fore and make it a package deal. So you have the process, you have the implementation, you can measure it, and then it's up to you to implement it in your company, which is the hardest part, because when it comes to sales guys, there's always going to be a resistance to do that. But that's the next stage. At least be aware that it's a science, that there are processes, and this is how it can get done. So the GASP Sales Academy has a large mandate, and I'm very fortunate to be partnered by other mentors like Mr. Sunil Haribal, who's a sales trainer, Manish Lumba, who's a sales and distribution expert, and COURSEBuilding, who's an innovation expert, because innovation and design thinking is part and parcel of the value proposition. So these people are with me, and we're going to be doing a lot of work on getting the startups up to date, so that they never say, oh, I don't have the time to implement these processes, because these processes will be ingrained in them and it will automatic to them.
So for the past decade or so, you seem to have morphed into an unconsultant. This seems an unusual term. Can you explain this for our viewers?
So as I mentioned, the if you heard me speak so far, what is it I'm focusing on? I'm focusing on sales productivity all the time. I'm not talking about marketing, branding, not that they're not important, but my very laser focus is on this particular aspect of the business. Just like if you take a manufacturing person to the shop floor, there are people who look at productivity of the labor, the machinery. Everything works in a continuum, but I'm focusing on the sales productivity, and that is why I call unconsultant, because most consultants today talk about consultancy on sales and structure, sales strategy. Up till now, I have not uttered the word strategy so far. The first time I uttered it. Okay. The reason for that is I'm purposely driving home this point, because to ensure that the sales people understand very clearly that the strategy is in place. The key lies in execution and mastering that in the field, and that is why I am an unconsultant.
So tell us something about, give us some details about what Sales Academy is all going to be. What are you going to offer the students there?
So we, as I mentioned, there are 3 to 4 layers. Starting with the basic is the GASP. That's why the GASP Sales Academy has been formed, to implement GASP and make it a sales standard by means of a sales toolkit. So there are training programs on that. Then there is the build, operate, transfer for implementing these processes with startups. Then there is sales training skills, selling skill training. Then there is something called performance measurement and development. And lastly is the Salesforce automation. Now, to basically start up the academy, we have a flagship course. It's called Building Efficient Sales Organizations with GASP. So this course is being launched on 13th of September. It's a 5-day course, a 10-hour course, which takes you through the entire module of GASP, which is customer management, sales partner management, sales team management, and sales operation management. All the 27 processes which are built in here, we will be teaching that to the cohorts. The thing about GASP is it's only 10% classroom training and 90% is implementation. So following the 10-hour module, we're going to have a 1-hour free mentoring with the cohorts on taking that concepts and applying it to the businesses, so that they are a little bit better prepared to implement it in their businesses and ventures. If they need further help, that is, can be organized separately through a build, operate, transfer model. So we will communicate this to them in the building efficient sales organization with GASP. This is the flagship course, and I would now request that please show the link for booking this course. We have a website, gaspsalesacademy.com. All the details are there. This particular link that is being shown on the chat right now, you can just click on it. You'll go straight to the Know Your Courses section of the website, and you can make your payment. Cost is just 4,000 rupees for a 10-hour course, which is even less than 400 rupees per hour. You see, the thing about this is that it has to be affordable to people to make. And in this comes a 1-hour free mentoring, plus, and bonus in this is a 2-hour sales, selling, negotiations skills training that is built into this particular course. So you will be trained with about how to negotiate. This is done by the ACE sales trainer, Mr. Sunil Haribal, who has got more than 35 years experience in sales training. So this is very important to have. Out of the 10 hours, 2 hours is this. Rest of the 8 hours about the GASP and the particular processes, and 1 hour free mentoring. And we have, when we say it's a 10-hour course, we aren't going to be sticking by the clock. It all depends on the cohort. So what we have done is we have given a day's gap between each of the modules. So we expect that we're planning to do a 4 to 6 timing for this each day. That evening and the next day, the cohort should think about these particular processes which have been outlined. How do they apply to my own business? And come back with some queries, come back with some clarifications, which we can discuss. So it's a highly interactive session, and a session like this doesn't exist anywhere else. I've done it previously in the past It will be very successful. So I would urge people to really go ahead and book this course.
And who should attend these courses? I mean, is it for people who are heading sales, part of sales, or even CEOs of startups?
The primary use of this is actually for entrepreneurs, founders who are running startup businesses, because it can be for anybody actually. But my primary focus is that because entrepreneurs and founders come from multiple disciplines, especially if he's a tech guy. All the thing is about technology and building a product. The real work starts after that. So my primary focus is looking at that, entrepreneurs and founders. But anybody at the sales director level, CXO, CEO level will find this extremely useful in terms of the way I look at it. What I do, जैसे हम हिंदी में कहते हैं, आपको ये सोचने पे मजबूर करेगा कि actually sales चीज क्या है. It's a science. It's a that can be taught. And my objective truly is, as a mentor, is that I want to ingrain this science in each and everybody. You see, when you look at, let me give you an example. When you look at these master chefs on TV who come and talk about the dish and talk about what they do it so effortlessly, so quickly. Why do they do that? Because the entire science of cooking is ingrained in them. I want a situation where each one of the salespeople coming to each of the cohorts coming there, ingrain GASP in them, so it becomes automatic. So what happens because of that? You build sales productivity, and because of that, the entire business. See, the impact of sales productivity is so huge on the business that people often discount it. Improved sales productivity would mean getting more output from the same cost. What does it mean? Better results, sales results, better profitability, better ROI. So it is at the core. Getting funding, getting your plant set up, getting a product made is well done, a pat on the back, a box tick, okay? But the real work really starts after that. That is where the GASP Sales Academy is going to really help cohorts.
And that's where startups fail or go to the next round, isn't it? Having the right sales.
Yeah. So I don't want people to think that they can just come in and walk away with a PhD. No, 37 years of knowledge of this, which I have gained, I've curated into a sales toolkit. You need to understand, digest it, be a good follower, and implement it. And we will handhold you so that you don't make the mistakes. And there is a learning curve. There is a learning curve that's going to happen. But at all times, you want to remember one thing: follow the process, and you will get the result.
And finally, what prompted you to launch GASP Sales Academy?
Well, I think probably if you heard me speak now for the past half an hour or so, there is so much of confusion in this world about what sales is. Good salespeople will always say it's a science, but they are not talking. Okay, there is nobody going out with a flag saying, this is a science, this is science. Good companies are doing well are obviously following the processes. There's no doubt about it. It is the SME sector, the MSME sector, the engine of growth in India that really badly requires this. Everybody requires it, but if you make a difference there, it can have a huge impact on the economy. Okay, so I really thought that instead of trying to talk to individual people and go to clients and talk about it, why don't I collect everybody in one place, share the knowledge, okay, and let them go out, implement it. And one of the important points: once you're a GASP Sales Academy alumni, you're with us for life. Because as a mentor, as a coach, it doesn't happen that somebody comes for a course, pays money, and goes away. No, that person is in my sight all the time. And I do remember, or we all remember, all mentors remember what that person was capable of. So I still have people, I've 2 years back come back and say, when we heard you last time, that time we didn't believe you, but I implemented it, it worked. So it is a tough journey, but we are there to help you. And once you get this right, when you get the science of selling, sales management, and processes right, then let me guarantee you, you will always change the process, and the result will be an outcome of that. And not only that, as a founder, if you have this culture built into your beginning DNA from the start, you cannot go wrong, because ultimately valuation is a measure of the success of the business. And investors will love you, the customers will love you, employees will love you. So it's a win-win.
So I just want to quickly touch upon that point that you said. Once you're alumni of GASP Sales Academy, you will handhold them whenever they need you. So is there a system that you're creating which is going to be inbuilt into your academy where people can come back, discuss with you, or with your team, with your mentors, or even maybe peer-to-peer mentoring within the people who attend your academy? Is that what you have in mind? Is that
Absolutely, absolutely. That is the word. That is why it's the word academy. Academy is a place where they train and retrain, because GASP is an iterative process. You implement something, we learn something more. So it's a lifelong learning. Even today I learn. When I go to some of my clients, I still learn different flavors. So, the thing about this, GASP is a science. Right at the top, there's a small art part. So if two people learn GASP and they go to they set about their ventures, each one will have the same processes. The flavor will be different. Just like you go to a doctor.
And they also benefit from the case studies, probably, you build as you go through the course, right?
That's right. They also benefit from the case studies. The point is that each person can have his own flavor, but first learn the science, like a doctor does MBBS, or they all are basic, then each one treats patients differently. So we do that, and that is exactly what the GASP Academy. So they will come back. You will have still some failures. You'll say, oh sir, I went and did this, but it did not work. To go back to the root cause, we help them to do that, because it's very simple. I look at the process again and say, okay, where did you falter? So I have a checklist. In my case, it's automatic in my DNA now, because it's a science ingrained in me. But for them, I'll show them the checklist which they themselves learn, and my job is to make them find their own answers, not come back to me every time.
Can you elaborate a little bit more, though you touched it briefly, about your mentors? What are their experiences and what do they come from? I mean, with what background do they come from?
So, when I looked at the GASP Academy, I picked mentors with whom I have worked in the past, and who support my philosophy that selling and sales management is a science. That is the prime requisite of anybody trying to work with me, as by now you must have realized. So, Mr. Sunil Haribal, who's a sales trainer, and he comes from the world of P&G for 22 years, and he left P&G and started his own company. He never worked for any other company, at all. So P&G has this term. It's called brutal obsession with sales fundamental, which is what he brings to the party. So he's a sales trainer par excellence. Manish Lumba is my colleague from my client days. Excellent person for distribution, for sales partnerships, building sales partnerships, how to make them work. So this is the other person. And of course, COURSEBuilding is a very well-known design thinker and innovation expert. He will come in and tell you about how to innovate and how to build a value proposition that is differentiated from competition, which is the start of the race. If you don't have that, the rest of the GASP actually falls flat. So these are three crucial pieces of this academy we put together, and they are equally passionate about communicating and imparting the knowledge like I am.
Well, we hope the founders and entrepreneurs and startups who are looking at this program, watching this program, would benefit from what you've shared with them. And we, Mr. Suri, we wish you all the best for Sales Academy, GASP Sales Academy, and we will be looking, we looking forward to connect with you next week, same time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure talking to you. And I would once again encourage all of you to please book this course on the link shown in the chat. And if you've got any queries, please go to the website, contact me. I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thank you.